when a train conductor threw a passenger off into a freezing blizzard. He thought he was putting him in his place, but he had no idea he had just messed with the wrong man. What happened when the train reached the next station changed everything. The train rattled through the blizzard-covered countryside, the kind of cold that made you rethink all your life choices. Outside, snow came down in thick sheets, smothering the landscape, while inside the packed carriage was a different kind of cold, silent, tense, full of people pretending they didn't notice each other. Jamal Briggs sat by the window, his posture easy, a hardcover book in his hands. His military gray winter coat hugged his broad frame, and his boots, dusty with snow from the platform, were propped casually beneath his seat. A long scar ran down his right cheek, the kind that had a story behind it, the kind most people didn't ask about. Jamal wasn't here to make noise. He wasn't here to fight. He was just trying to get home. Across the aisle, a young mother fumbled with her crying toddler, hands full of shopping bags. The little boy had just dropped his stuffed bear, and nobody in the packed train seemed to care. Jamal did. He leaned down, scooped up the toy from the grimy floor, and handed it back to the kid with a small smile. Here you go, little man. The boy's face lit up. Thanked you, he babbled, gripping the bear tight. His mother glanced up, exhaustion flickering into gratitude. I appreciate that. Jamal nodded and turned back to his book, and that's when he heard it. Ticket, please. The voice was sharp, impatient. Jamal looked up. The conductor stood over him, middle-aged, white, with a thick mustache that twitched as he stared down like he already didn't like what he saw. Jamal reached into his coat, pulled out his ticket, and handed it over. The conductor barely glanced at it before his lips pressed into a tight, unforgiving line. This ticket's invalid. Jamal raised an eyebrow. No, it's not. Bought it this morning. The conductor exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I said it's invalid. Louder this time. The energy in the carriage shifted. Heads turned. The air grew thick with something ugly, something unspoken. Jamal met the man's gaze, holding it steady. Check again, but the conductor didn't even pretend to look. He straightened his shoulders, his posture shifting into something meant to assert control. I don't have to check anything. You need to get off at the next stop. Jamal let that sit in the air for a second, let it marinate. Passengers were watching now, but nobody spoke up. A businessman shifted uncomfortably. A teenage girl frowned, but their eyes dropped, looking away. Just another day, another situation they didn't want to get involved in. Jamal exhaled, slowly measuring his options. He could argue, he could fight. This he could demand to see the man's supervisor, but he already knew how that would play out. The conductor would double down, maybe call security, maybe the police, and if that happened, Jamal, despite everything he had done for this country, despite the fact that he had risked his life more times than this man could count, would be the one painted as the problem. So he didn't argue. He stood slowly, deliberately. The train door slid open, and the blizzard outside howled like it was waiting for him. As Jamal grabbed his bag, a voice spoke up. The young mother. He didn't do anything wrong. The conductor shot her a glare so sharp it could cut glass. Stay out of this. Jamal met her gaze. She looked sorry, but sorry wasn't going to change what was happening. He stepped toward the open doors. The cold hit like a slap, stealing the breath from his lungs. Wind roared through the station, snow swirling so thick it was impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. He stepped out. The door slammed shut behind him, and just like that, the train pulled away, leaving him standing alone on an empty, frozen platform in the middle of nowhere. The cold hit Jamal like a freight train the moment the doors slammed shut behind him. The kind of cold that didn't just chill your skin, it gnawed at your bones, made you feel like you were breathing in shards of ice. Snow swirled violently around him, thick and relentless, cutting visibility down to nothing. He could barely make out the empty platform, stretching in both directions, just a Single flickering street light buzzing. Above, no staff, no waiting area, no. Sheltered Jamal inhaled slowly his breath, curling into a frosty mist his body had. Endured worse deserts that could fry you, alive jungles where the air was thick. Enough to choke on, but this was a slow creeping kind of danger he reached. Into his coat, pulled out his phone, no. Signal. Figures his jaw clenched, he glanced back at the tracks, but the train was long. Gone, swallowed by the storm. Jamal took a deep breath, then started moving. The platform ended in a small path that led to an icy road. There were no signs, no posted schedules, nothing to suggest when or if another train would come. He didn't have the luxury of waiting. With steady steps, he made his way onto the road. 20 minutes later, the wind was relentless, screaming through the trees on either side of the road. The snow had turned the ground into a slick frozen mess, and every step was a calculated move to avoid slipping. His coat was heavy, designed for brutal conditions, but even it wasn't enough to keep the deep freeze from creeping in his fingers. His ears burned. The sharp bite of the wind cut through every layer like it was personal. He needed shelter soon. Then headlights, a dull glow in the distance, growing brighter. Jamal stepped to the side of the road and raised a hand. The truck skid slightly as it slowed, tires crunching against the ice. The driver rolled down the window, a middle-aged man, thick beard, eyes squinting against the storm. The heater inside was blasting warm air, curling out into the night. The man looked Jamal up and down. Jesus, man, what the hell are you doing out here? Jamal dusted snow off his shoulders, got kicked off the train. The driver's brows pulled together. You serious? Jamal gave a short nod. The man exhaled, shaking his head. Well, damn, hop in before you freeze to death. Jamal didn't hesitate the moment. He climbed inside, warmth wrapped around him like a lifeline. He rubbed his hands together, flexing his fingers to bring back circulation. The truck smelled like coffee and engine grease, a dashboard full of crumpled receipts and half-eaten energy bars. The driver put the truck back in gear, easing it down the icy road. Where you headed? Closest town. Jamal answered. The man glanced at him again. Name's Rick. Jamal. Rick gave him a sideways look. You military? Jamal smirked, rolling his shoulders, something like that. Rick didn't press, just gave a knowing nod. Yeah, figured the road stretched out before them, endless and empty. The storm swallowing everything behind them. 15 minutes later, small town diner. The truck rolled into a one-stop-light town, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. Rick pulled into a diner lot. Tires crunching over ice. A neon open sign flickered against the stormy backdrop. Jamal stepped out, pulling his coat tighter around himself, and walked inside. Heat, the smell of coffee, bacon grease, and burnt toast. The diner wasn't packed, just a handful of locals nursing their late night meals. A trucker hunched over his plate of eggs. A couple sat in the corner sharing a milkshake. The waitress, mid-50s, name tag reading. Marge looked up from the counter, eyes scanning him over. She didn't say anything, but Jamal could feel the stare. Small town folks weren't used to strangers, especially ones like him. Jamal ignored them. He pulled out his phone, checked again. Signal. Finally, he made one call. The voice on the other end picked up immediately. Briggs. Jamal leaned against the counter, rubbing his hands together for warmth. Need a favor? There was a pause and a low chuckle. Who's the unlucky bastard? Jamal exhaled, slowly staring out the diner window, watching the snow bury the road behind them. The train conductor, he said, thought it'd be funny to throw me off in a blizzard. Silence. Then, oh, he's about to have a real bad day. The train hissed to a stop at the station, its brakes groaning against the tracks. The door slid open and passengers spilled out, stretching their legs, checking their phones, grabbing coffee from the dingy little kiosk near the platform. The conductor stepped off, rolling his shoulders, one hand clutching a steaming Cup of coffee, he took a slow sip, exhaling as if he'd just finished a hard day's work, then boots on pavement, a steady, deliberate rhythm, not hurried, not hesitant. Just there the conductor froze. Mid-sip his pulse stuttered. Something about that sound hit him in a way he couldn't explain. He turned. Jamal stood a few feet away, warm, alive, and not alone. Behind him, parked at the edge of the platform, sat a black SUV, its engine humming low like a beast, waiting to pounce. Two men leaned against it, broad, unreadable, dressed in tactical gear that wasn't store-bought. These weren't bodyguards, they weren't cops. They were operators, the kind of men who didn't deal in second chances. The conductor's breath hitched. Jamal stepped forward, his movements slow, controlled. His winter coat still held traces of snow from his walk through the storm, but there was nothing cold about the look in his eyes. Remember me, the conductor swallowed hard, his grip on the coffee cup tightened. Listen, man, Jamal cut him off. You made a bad call tonight. His voice wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. The station suddenly felt smaller. Passengers in the waiting area shifted, uncomfortably sensing the tension. A mother pulled her child closer. A businessman suddenly became very interested in his phone. Nobody stepped forward. Jamal took another step. The space between them shrank. I could have died out there. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it, something that made the air itself feel heavier. And the worst part, you didn't care. You didn't check my ticket. You didn't ask questions. You saw my skin and you made a decision. The conductor's mouth opened, then closed. His mind scrambled for a defense, an excuse, and anything that would make this moment disappear. I didn't know. Jamal's expression didn't change. That's the problem, isn't it? The words landed like a hammer. The conductor's face drained of color. His fingers trembled against the coffee cup. For the first time in his life, he felt it. Powerlessness. No uniform, no title, no authority to hide behind. Just a man standing in front of another man, realizing too late that he had picked the wrong one to mess with.